from Buddhism, you know, and found the synthesis, found the truth behind them all. Now, in the West, we don't do that enough. You see, I think that's what they were doing in Alexandria, say. They were marrying up Judaism and Neoplatonism, and they were hearing about Buddhism from traders and stuff. And that's where Theosophy was born. You know, that was a term coined in Alexandria. But in mainstream thought, it's like we stay in our little ghettos. But for instance, as a Druid, you see, the Druids have a lot in common with the Shinto tradition. They revere nature, the trees, the kami, which are the spirits of the place. You know, this wonderful loch has like a kami, a presence in nature. And the family lineages have kamis, you know. So the Druids, you know, acknowledge that sanctity of place and time and ancestry. But it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's completely 100% possible to be a Druid and also a Christian, and also a Buddhist, and also a Sikh or a yogi or a Kabbalist, because they're all different windows on the truth, you know, and they're like stained glass windows, all of which reflect the light, but they're not the light itself. That's something transcendental. Right,
and I think that there seems to be, and maybe I'm wrong about this, and it's just my experience, but it seems to be there's a convergence that's happening among all those things, and more people are recognizing this.
Yeah.
You know, I think that there has been some kind of idea that to stray from a specific point of view leads to a bastardization of each one of these things. But I kind of tend to think of it like you do, where all of you, if you can see the commonality in it, there is no bastardization of anything. It's
not
more
if you go into it in depth enough.
Right.
I mean, if you just go like a sort of supermarket type thing. That was Chogyam Trungpa's point in cutting through spiritual materialism. If you just do the shallow thing, you get this training, that initiation. You know, it's like collecting little certificates. That's different. If you really go into it, engage existentially, enough to see the light within that lineage, and then come out to that light, then you meet all your brothers and sisters from all the other lineages.
Yes.
It's like
right. And then you start to build a world that's inclusive again, instead of exclusive.
Yeah, which is a world of peace and love, which is what we're all trying to do. So look, I just had only a couple more questions. You talked about Carl Sagan, that was interesting. Tell us a bit more about your work on that documentary and what Carl was like as a person.
Well, it's very interesting working with Carl, because you know, I think that he's been kind of deified as this person who brought science to the masses.
Okay.
And I think in terms of that, he was really instrumental in opening a lot of people's eyes to science.
The cosmos, that series.
And to be fascinated with the things that science had shown us, and how that progression opened minds. I worked on a show with James Burke once called The Day the Universe Changed. And it was all about these fundamental discoveries that changed the way people viewed the universe.
Oh, right.
Like the idea that we were at that the sun was the center of the universe rather than the sun rotating around the earth.
The Copernican revolution, yeah.
Right, all of those things. Right. That shifted our way of thinking. And so Carl kind of did that in his own way by making science accessible to people.
Right.
You know, to take it out of the ivory towers or off this, you know, out of the back pages of things, and putting it in terms that people could understand.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and for that I think the world owes a great debt. You know, personally I think he had, that kind of went to his head sometimes.
Right.
And you know, I don't really want to sully his reputation, you know, by
spilling the beans,
on personal things
carry
that
the secrets with you.
Yeah, but that I've learned, you know, living next to him, you know.
Sure, well, we all have.
But
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that point about science, Aristotle said true philosophy begins with wonder, and true science, I think, makes us wonder. I caught a documentary on National Geographic Channel once, which I think is a great channel, about the sun, and I learned something there I hadn't known before, which I find absolutely awesome. And we've just had the summer solstice here, so I'll just share this. And I know in the Japanese Shinto religion they worship the sun goddess, and you know the sun's really important to them as it is to the Druids. Well, in the heart of the sun, where the fusion reaction is taking place between hydrogen atoms to make helium, right, which is how the whole thing is powered, it releases energy at that point, and that escapes in the nature of photons, which is light energy, right. Now the photons are sort of expelled, but they swirl around inside the sun because the sun is such a hot, swirling mass of plasma, right, that once a photon is created in the heart of the sun, it takes, I think it's 100,000 years. Don't quote me on the exact figure, but it's at least that, possibly 150,000 years of Earth time, right, for that little photon through the swirling plasma to get to the surface of the sun.
Wow.
Right? And then it takes like 9 minutes to get to Earth. So every little bit of sunlight that you sunbathe in, or that heats your food up, or makes the photosynthesis cycle that makes our lives here possible, every little single photon has come out of that process. It spent 100,000 years inside the sun swirling about, and then it just zips to Earth. And I just can't look at sunlight without just being in absolute awe of it. Do you know what I mean? It's like that.
It's hard, really, when you really consider everything, that you can look at anything and not be filled with awe. All the things that we take for granted as just a simple part of our lives are just, we take for granted as just being there.
And that surely is the point of philosophy, is to get people to wake up to that sense of awe, that sense of wonder. And if we do that, surely we're going to get peace on this planet. That's the theory of what we're doing at the castle.
I think so. I think we just have to be distracted from how different we are.
Yeah.
And start to see the uniformity so that we can be inclusive of each other. You know, if we can, you know, when you think about it, it's inclusiveness that bonds, and it's exclusiveness that starts problems. You and I, we might not agree on something, but if there's trouble at the door, you and I are going to bond together against that trouble. And if the people at the door who are the trouble are threatened by famine or something bigger than we are, we'll bond together to do something about that. And you know, you see the national pride that happens when 9/11 happened in the United States. People put down their differences and were unified in this idea that we had to protect ourselves. People on both sides of the fence.
The trouble is, of course, that then you protect yourself by then demonizing the other.
Exactly.
And that's a problem.
But that's what I'm saying. It's kind of like you see a movie like Independence Day.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the Earth is threatened by extraterrestrials, and then the Earth, all the people of the Earth are bonding together.
Yeah.
You know, it's sometimes the conflict that creates the unity.
Sure.
If we can get the unity without the conflict.
Well, that's the secret, isn't it? How do you get the bonding, the love, without the need for the enemy, the externalization?
And I think it's how we see each other. A lot of times when I work with Aikido, as I tell the people when I grab them, I give them this feeling that they're it's a very slight feeling, but it's enough of an intrusion into their central core physically that their brain starts perceiving it as a threat. And no matter how they try to orchestrate their thinking and believe they can be compassionate and loving toward me, their body's showing that they're not. Their body shows that there's some part of their brain that's more in control of this than they are, than their intellect is.